Communism, Socialism, Democratic-Socialism, and Social Democracy Explained. You've most likely heard Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez call themselves Democratic-Socialists, but you've also probably seen them be labeled as socialists or communists throughout the media and by right-wing talking heads. These terms are often thrown around as insults in the West, used more to scare than to educate. Hello, I'm Comrade Drew, and in this video I'm going to explain communism, socialism, democratic socialism, and social democracy, four of the most commonly used buzzwords, in order to clear up misconceptions, help you get a better understanding of what they mean, and help break through the fear and misinformation that's been built up around them. There is a common foundation between these four terms in that they are all critiquing capitalism. To keep things simple, I'll define capitalism as the private ownership of the means of production. The means of production refer to things like land, labor, machinery, etc. All four terms aim to reduce inequality, but they differ greatly in how they mean to go about making society more equal. I made this line graph to help visualize the differences between them. The red half represents a socialistic economy, while the blue half represents a capitalistic economy. Now that we have the foundation set, we can move on and examine each individual term to gain a proper understanding of what they really mean. Socialism is the broadest term of the four. Therefore, it is the best to start with. We'll place socialism here on the line graph. Socialism is an umbrella term that encompasses all ideologies that seek to establish a socialistic economy. A socialistic economy is an economy in which the means of production, the land, labor, and resources, are owned collectively by the community rather than any private individual. In other words, it is a workers' democracy. Rather than aiming to maximize profit for one or a few people, like under capitalism, socialism aims to establish a motive based on need, where things are produced for the common good of the community as a whole. Socialists differ in how they wish to go about this and how exactly they want society to look like after socialism is established. For some socialists, like certain democratic socialists, socialism is the end goal, but for others, like communists, socialism is the transitionary period between capitalism and communism. It is often referred to as the lower stage of communism. Regardless of what you believe, if you seek to replace capitalism with a system where workers control the means of production and goods are produced for need rather than profit, then you fall somewhere under the socialist umbrella. Communism is the furthest left on our ideology spectrum, and it also happens to be where I fall under. Communism, like socialism, is a blanket term that covers multiple sub-ideologies that all have the same end goal: a stateless, classless, and moneyless society. There have been many communist parties, but there has never been a true to the definition communist country. All of the communist sub-ideologies stem from the theory of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. The most common sub-ideologies under communism are Marxism-Leninism, Trotskyism, and Marxism-Leninism-Maoism. For the purposes of this video, an explanation on the differences between the sub-ideologies is not necessary, but I can make a video about that if you let me know down in the comments below that you'd like to see that. Cuba, the truest socialist state around today, is led by the Communist Party of Cuba, which follows Marxism-Leninism. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR, also followed Marxism-Leninism. Communists believe that in order to give power to the workers, there has to be an overthrow of capitalism and the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat, which sounds scary until you realize that we currently live under the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. The dictatorship of the proletariat simply means that the proletariat, the working class, becomes the ruling class in society, where they can then lead the transition from capitalism to socialism, bring true democracy to the people by giving them more power, and where they can crush the resistance of the bourgeoisie as it seeks to re-establish the old order of society. Communism differs from the other ideologies in that it believes in the necessity of revolution, and that socialism is the lower stage of communism. In other words, it is the revolutionary transition period between capitalism and the realization of communism. Democratic socialism finds its place on our diagram to the right of communism and falls under socialism, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll place it to the right of both of them, closest to the middle of the spectrum. Democratic socialism is anti-capitalist, but the means of replacing capitalism go from revolutionary to reformistic, and most commonly advocate for socialism through elections and strong reforms. Democratic socialism doesn't imply that other forms of socialism are undemocratic. If they were undemocratic, then it wouldn't be socialism to begin with. It implies that they support a democratic state with free and fair elections, usually including right-wing parties. Perhaps the best example of this is Salvador Allende from Chile. who was elected democratically and began reforming the country by nationalizing industry, expropriating land, and enacting widespread education and literacy campaigns. With all that said, it can be a pretty confusing term, but I hope this cleared up some of the misconceptions about it. Social democracy is the only ideology of the four that falls on the capitalistic side of the line chart. It advocates for a strong welfare capitalist state. Social democracy is what is actually being referred to when socialism is thrown around to describe countries like Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Social democracy does not seek to replace capitalism, but reform it to the extent that things like universal healthcare and education, improved labor laws, and an enhanced social safety net are commonplace. The state may own some companies, but they usually are in low-profit industries, while the majority of business is privately owned. Capitalism remains, which means that the problems that capitalism perpetuates also remain. Workers still create profits for capitalists that don't do the work, and higher taxation means that the proletariat is still exploited. So while politicians like Bernie Sanders and AOC are often labeled as radicals, their actual policies align with social democracy, a more modest attempt to humanize capitalism rather than replace it with socialism. I hope this cleared up some of the confusion surrounding four terms that get thrown around so often and are misused regularly. Drop a comment letting me know if I helped you gain a better understanding, or, if you're still confused, I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have. If this video was helpful, please leave a like as it is the best way to get it seen by more people. All of my links are posted in the description below, including my Blue Sky and Ko-fi accounts. Understanding these ideas is the first step to creating a better world for all. So if you're ready to learn more about communism and socialism, question the capitalist-dominated society that most of us live under, and begin realizing the change that we need to see, subscribe to the Comrade Drew channel and join the movement.